Welcome to this episode of Chatting with Staxx. I'm your host, Bill Staxx, and today I got Larry Mazza.
I'm going to talk a little bit about the war now, too. Okay, at the beginning, Greg's dementia wasn't that bad, Big Greg. As this thing went on, okay, he got more and more demented, and he got more and more frail. Jimmy and I kept him alive, okay? And if we were there with him the night he got his eye shot out, it wouldn't have happened. He decided to go off with some other people, and that's what happened, okay? I'll say it again, we're definitely not the toughest guys in the world. We weren't vicious killers. We didn't chop bodies up, so I'm not a tough guy. But during that war, okay, there wasn't a hit that took place that I wasn't in the car shooting with the father. We both shot, okay? Jimmy was basically the driver. On the last one, Greg missed. We had to get out and finish the guy. Well, I shouldn't say he missed. He hit him in the ass. He shot, and the guy fell down. We got out of the car, and the three of us opened up and finished.
There's rumors that you guys were screaming different things, like this is for this guy, right?
Yeah, hold on. That's a big deal. That's a big deal because on the Nicky Black hit, okay, he did fumble the weapon. Jimmy was, again, every step of the way, and he never brings up Jimmy. You know, you want to say he wasn't a tough guy too? I don't think you want to say that. Okay, he was there every step of the way, and he saw the bullets getting thrown on the floor.
Larry come up with the story that my father was fumbling the bullets.
And he heard them. And his own comment was after when we got home to go watch Seinfeld, he told me and babysit his daughter, he says, man, I'm so happy you were ready. Because he pulled up alongside this guy and all he heard was the bullets. But I was already leaning out the window. I had a bandana on, sunglasses, a baseball hat. And there was witnesses to that the police heard. It was a guy with a beard, a baseball hat. I was leaning out. That was me, okay? It was put on record. He liked to brag and boast and take credit for everything. He took credit for guys that I'm hearing he didn't kill. He told me he killed Mimi. I'm hearing from people that it wasn't him. I don't know if he did or he didn't. That's what he told me. So I don't know if he lied to me then or the guy that told me he knows who did it and it wasn't Greg. Or if that guy's lying or was being lied to. I could only say what I was told because Mimi was before me. Okay, but this hit,
but it's supposedly
he went as far as to tell Carmine Sessa, okay, that when we shot him, he yelled out the window, "This is for Carmine." When he told that to Carmine Sessa, I remember me and Jimmy looking at each other like, what is he doing? What are we, children? Why would you make something up? He didn't say that, and here's the problem with that. I told the feds that was never said. They used it in court because to prove racketeering, they had to prove that there was a war. Okay? That these weren't just random killings like the mob does over the years. Okay? Guys getting whacked out for whatever reasons. They had to prove there was a war and there was two sides. So him saying this was for Carmine was the starter. That came out at trial, even though it wasn't said. Because he said it to Carmine, and Carmine Sessa said it. The other one was the Larry Lampese hit, okay? The three of us were shooters. There's no doubt, okay? That guy got massacred. And there's a story behind that. Because of the frustration with me and Jimmy, we made that comment, or I did, to Greg. I said, these guys don't want to give up. I said, we got to do something drastic. We got to massacre somebody. I said that. And not too long after we got him. The guy was on the floor. And he was telling us, do it already. Do it, because he heard us walking towards him and he was hurt.
And he really said that on the floor.
He said, he said, do it already, or something very close to that. Do it already, or do it. No doubt about that. Okay. And I've said it's one of those words. Do it already. Greg tells Carmine, he said, what did I do? And Greg says, you picked the wrong side. Nothing was said. There was no word spoken on either of those hits. We went up, did the job, and drove off. He had to embellish it, make himself even tougher and more brazen and more whatever. They used that. You just proved there were two sides. You picked the wrong side. That came up. They go chasing 302s and court transcripts. Go see that. Those words were never spoken. And I said it. I said, that wasn't said. He was embellishing it. Okay. So that hurt people. That proved, there was a war, things like that. Eventually, with all the people that operated, it wouldn't have been that difficult to prove there was a war anyway. But I'm lying about all this. I might as well tell you up front. It's going to come out somewhere. Oh, I'm making all that up. But I was there. The people that are saying I lied weren't there. They weren't sitting in the car with this lunatic at the end that didn't care about his own life anymore.
So Junior says that first he says you were made, right? And now he's saying you weren't made. You weren't made.
Yeah. It's a big deal in life. Just getting straightened out is a big deal.
Right.
Once we get to the war, we'll talk about that along the way.
Yeah.
And whether they did what they did for me, thinking it would keep me quiet or
no, I don't think
because it was heroic what we did, or getting to know your father and the things he had said to me.
Right.
That we don't know when Gregory's coming home.
Right.
I don't know how long I'm going to live.
Right.
Needed him because he had gotten sick.
Right.
And he called for Carmine Sessa several times, who was the consigliere, to get me brought in. And because he was on Vic's side early on, it never happened.
Yeah.
There was supposed to be a ceremony where we were going to go. Carmine came over the house and told your father he thinks we're all going to get killed at that meeting. Your father just laughed in his face. He says, you're watching too many movies.
Yeah. Carmine said it?
Carmine Sessa.
Yeah. He was a paranoid guy.
Oh, he was
a paranoid guy.
Paranoid. He fainted during the war in my arms. It was terrible. But
that's funny.
No, so anyway, get back to that. So, but the funny thing is, that night when it did happen, your father was an official captain after that. Because he didn't want to lose me.
Right.
He said, and they made it clear I'm staying under him.
Right.
It's like you said, how you get put with a captain.
Right, yeah.
And then his next thing was, if you remember, we drove to Leavenworth.
Yeah.
To be introduced to you.
Absolutely.
Because you were official captain, and that was going to be, our
Well,
our
you
guy
need somebody that's over there to introduce you. That's
right.
You know what I mean? And, and that's what he did. You know, and I congratulated you and Jimmy.
Yeah, no, I appreciated that. It was meaningful, you know, because we did feel like we were doing everything for this family.
Right.
Okay, I've said it all along. I said it was the most illustrious, what's the word? It wasn't this extravagant ceremony. It wasn't like TV. It was done because, and he knows it. He knows it because Junior Persico sent a message. Okay, the men wanted us at all the meetings, and you need to be a good fella to be at those meetings. And with all the work we did and all the work they didn't do, who was going to argue that? None of them. Every hand went up. Everybody voted yes. Okay. Then somebody came out and said guys weren't getting straightened out. The books were closed. What the fuck do you know about books? You groupie. You're online reading something. Okay. Vic Arena was making guys on the other side. And Greg Sr. told all our top guys, we have to put an administration together and bring it to the other families. And at that meeting, Joe T was made boss because Greg recommended him. Junior agreed to it, Persico. He recommended Joe Russo. Joe T said, okay, he'll be my underboss. Of course, Junior Persico is going to agree to that. It's his nephew, Andrew Mush's son. He recommends to Carmine Sessa to go on the lam because he's got legal problems coming. His crystal ball, but he knew. So he does go on the lam after that, and he makes Richie Fusco the acting consigliere who eventually kept that position. We got made that night, okay? We went through, like I said, it wasn't this big magic wand waved over me. They did it
just
for a
you
reason.
and Jimmy, right?
And yeah. And I asked Gregory about that on my interview. I says, I guess they just did it at the end there to, to maybe keep me quiet. If, with all the heat and everything, and he said himself, he says, no, they did it for what you did during that war. And I said, well, thanks. I was hoping that was the reason,
Well, apparently, after you get made, after the war, that doesn't even, you're not recognized.
No, that's once you get it, you can't lose it. You could be put on a shelf. You could be, not really respected. There's a lot of wise guys that don't get much respect. I'm not going to name them, but he knows, and I know that there's a lot of them. But no, it was never going to change. Now, there was something that was said that if the family gets put back together, which it probably never would have, I don't think it would have, because Vic, Wild Bill, Vinny Alloy could never get a pass. So they could never come back in. And the only one I questioned was, what about Joe Scarpa? And Greg told me, no, he was taking orders. He could get a pass. All right. And the other side of it is, if we lose the war, there's going to be sacrificial lambs. And he went like this: me, you, and he pointed to Jimmy. But that's another lie. He says, we were the main guys, and they weren't going to trust us being around if Vic Arena won. So somewhere, just like they got Wild Bill later on, and they got some other guys, they got Joe Scopo later on.
They won, you guys would all have to go.
Yeah. And maybe not only us. I'm sure Carmine Sessa too would have been part of that.
Yeah, but if your side wins, he's saying that you wouldn't be recognized as the main guy.
I absolutely would have been. Absolutely would have been.
Yeah.
Then there would have been no need to do anything else because it was already done. And the funny thing is, they told me all the rules. Okay. And while they were telling them to me, Joe started it. Carmine had a few things to say. Joe spoke a little bit in Italian. I don't even know half of the things he was saying. Carmine did it all English. But when he was telling me things, and eventually they put me under Greg Sr., who had become a captain, was elevated to captain, and hearing these rules, I was almost laughing to myself at all of the rules, because every one of them, except up to that minute, the omerta, nobody at that table at that point, except for Greg, now we know, was breaking that one also. Every other rule was being broken. But these are rules we're supposed to abide by. So I'm laughing to myself. And I'll never forget this. I was asked, if my mother's at her deathbed and the family calls me to do work, will you come? And I said yes. And after that, I felt this big. Okay? But I realized that question, if we say yes, if all of us say yes to that in front of each other, we all brought us down to the same level of ruthless and evil. We're all equally evil. Would anybody leave their mother on a deathbed? When we got in the car and started driving back, Greg was driving. It was his Lincoln. Jimmy was in the back, I was in the front. And we were talking like friends now and different things and a little teaching. He looked at me and said, you know what he told me? He said, I would have never left my mother on her deathbed. Even the vicious, evil Greg said that to me afterwards.
Yeah.
But again, it's all a lie. I just dreamed about this last night. It didn't happen. We weren't driving home from the Meadowlands Hotel and having that conversation. I just dreamed it up last night.
So then after you get made, right? Walk me through when you get introduced to Junior. Because you already met him in the past, right? You already met him, but he was in prison.
Introduced means introduced as an official introduction to be a friend of ours, or that you're now a made guy. Okay, so it brings you to another level of status for conversations. You proved yourself. If you need to do work
talk
together,
business about the family,
right,
you can talk different
and
things.
So Greg Sr. immediately, within a day, I'm talking maybe 2 days, we were in the car driving to Leavenworth. That's where Greg Jr. was. And the stipulation that was made that night, when they made Greg a skipper for the first time in his whole tenure in the mob, he was never an official captain. They made him a captain just to keep me and Jimmy under him. Because when you get made, they'll put you with somebody.
Yeah.
They could take me away from Greg and put me with, Bobby Zam. Or they could take me away and put me with another guy. And they do that for balance of power. They don't want one crew to get too strong. But it was made stipulation that I stayed under Greg. He didn't want to lose me and Jimmy. We were the only two he trusted during the war. And he wanted us around him every 24/7 almost. Okay? And it was also that because he had the AIDS, if he should die, we get put under Greg Jr. We were both wonderfully happy with that because we wanted our whole little circle to remain what it was. I built up a very big business, a very big sports business, had a lot of money on the street. We were making big money. And if things changed and went in different ways, who knows if they put me under Wild Bill, or Vic or somebody else how much they're going to take from me after all the years that I put in. Okay, that's why a lot of this stuff had to happen. Wanted to keep our crew with, and later on, Richie Fusco called me because him and Greg had a beef. Richie Fusco's the consigliere. Greg makes me bring a note to Richie Fusco, who owed him $5,000, that if he doesn't give him his $5,000, he's going to get hurt. That's not demented. You sending me to bring that message on paper. Okay, and he made me read it. I bring it to Richie Fusco. Greg got the $5,000 within a few days. But that day when I was there, he took a walk with me. He didn't want to talk in the club.
Yeah.
And Richie tells me because Greg couldn't leave the house now. He was stuck in the house. I don't know at this point if he had house arrest yet or he didn't have bail or something. There was a reason he couldn't leave the house. He told me, Richie, anybody from 13th Avenue, from your crew, from that crew, needs to see me or anybody higher up. It's got to come through you. So he was putting a lot of trust in me right there. That's the consigliere, okay? He was there after that night I got brought in. We met the next night at Steak and Shake in New Jersey, and there's about 30 of our guys there. So 30 of our guys were immediately introduced. Then we went to see Greg Jr. When I got back to the pool room, I used to see Anthony Spiro every day because I had the pool room for about 2 years, and it was doing well. I was right across the street from Anthony Spiro's club. Now, we had some joker pokers in there. We had gambling going on. We had, running my business in there. I would make it my business to go say hello to him every single day. And then when Greg would come to the pool room later on in the afternoon, because now he was recovering, and he was still, had his stomach taken out. He was on medications and blood transfusions. Anthony would come across and have coffee every day. Well, 5 days a week, 4 days a week, and sit and chat, even though this was all going on in our lives. And I got introduced to him, and he made a really nice comment, which if I say it, he's a liar. I'm just going to leave it at that. Anthony was very kind when that happened. The other guys that came in, Georgie DeChico, he was a skipper with the Gambino family. We were all supposed to be on the shelf because we were against Vic, and John was on Vic's side. But there's about half of the Gambino family that sided with us, and they came to see us every day. Well, almost every day. A lot of them would stop in. Georgie DeChico, he came in with Frankie Fapp. And Frankie Fapp, in an unsolicited conversation, nobody asked for it. He told the person he was talking to, he remembers the day that he was introduced to Larry. Him and Georgie were introduced to Larry. He said it to a third party, and they told me. So it was nice of him to remember that, but me and Frankie were close. He was about my age, and I played football with his cousin years ago. We still have a relationship. I mean, I could call him and say hello, but he said he remembered that day because it was right in front of the pool room. One of the Ida brothers, I forget which one, it was Jimmy or Joey Ida, that hung out on 13th Avenue by a meat market. Greg brought me to see him. And when I say me, usually Jimmy was there too. Sometimes he wasn't. Somebody had to stay at the pool room, whatever. But a lot of times he was there too. And he got introduced to all these people. The other one of note was Tony Morelli. Tony Morelli used to come every day too. And we had just released the guy that was around us to him. So him and Greg were really close. He would come in a lot to see us. There was another guy in the Genovese family, Joey Mann. Joey Mann used to come in because the chin was behind us 100% during the war. Even after we accidentally shot one of his soldiers during the war. That was a big deal. That's when Carmine fainted in my arms, which is another lie. So
he said you're lying about Carmine fainting in your hands?
Well, I know he said everything. Everything is a lie. So whatever I'm saying, I mean, he's going to come out and that's his answer.
I've heard other stories about Carmine.
He's not going to say he was there when we both shot at Funzi D'Ambrosio, and he dove in the door, and we hit the other guy by mistake. That one, Greg didn't want to take credit for. He told me, you must have hit him. But we don't even know whose bullet hit him. And then Joe Tolino, Nicky Black's nephew, got shot in the foot and it was like a joke, it was a botch, but we had to make the attempt, but all this stuff, the best thing he could come out and say is I'm a liar. I mean, and he's wasting a lot of his life and time, and he's got enough discrepancies on his own. You hear his girlfriend in the background coaching him. It's really him. I would never condone my wife, girlfriend, family member. I would never condone that behavior. To go out.
Why she even involved? Why she even involved with any of this?
Yeah.
Like, this is like grown man business, right?
It isn't. It's beneath us. It's beneath the both of us, to go on. But again, I don't initiate it. I don't come out with. We wouldn't be sitting here now if this one didn't come out yesterday with this Jerry Springer group again, Millennial's Choice, who I did several interviews with. They never said anything but thank you. They knew I wasn't lying. They know I'm not lying. And they had Gene Borello on one of the shows, and he spoke very highly of me and the crew and had nothing but good things to say. So all of a sudden, they're getting some ratings, and they're going to just run with it. They've made themselves Jerry Springer. That's a shame because, like I said, I went on their show several times, So, but no, go, and the main guy thing, you showed it there before. You should put it up again because he was talking to somebody else. He wasn't talking to me. Who's this guy, Joe Graham, who asked the question?
Joe Graham. No clue. He says, Greg, there seems to be some controversy over Larry Mazza being made. Were you ever introduced to Larry as a friend in that life? He said, I can clear up the controversy right now. Yes, I was introduced to Larry Mazza and Jimmy. They came up to visit me with Greg Scarpa Sr. at Leavenworth during the war, explained to me by my father. And there was a message sent to Junior Persico, the boss, to have Jimmy and Larry straightened out so that they can attend meetings. And there was 1, 2, 3 main killers in the war. With that, my father introduced each of us, Jimmy and Larry, as good fellas, made guys.